Okay, good afternoon. Today we're going to discuss about chapter 3 on information, which is a vital business resource. But before we continue, let me summarize first what we've discussed last meeting. So last meeting we discussed about the different competencies of a worker, like word processing, data processing, information management and transmission, general managing, and communicating. We've also learned that for those different competencies required for a certain types of workers and the work opportunities available in office support services if you have those competencies, such as if you have a data processing skill or competency, then you can work as a budget analyst or a broker. And for word processing, you could work as a typist, secretary, or transcriptionist. So those are the things that we've learned last meeting's discussion. Now again, uh, today we're going to discuss information, which is a vital business resource. Okay. Now for chapter 3, we're going to learn about the following objectives. First is to explain the vital role that information plays in operating a business. And then describe common business information systems, communicate effectively in written form and in oral form. And lastly, plan, prepare, and deliver business presentations. Okay, so for topic 3-1, which is about information processing, the learning objectives are the following. First is define information, then explain how businesses use information, describe information processing activities, explain how information technologies enhance information systems, and list some security measures for information systems. Okay, so in order for a business to grow or prosper, an organization must make sound business decisions. Okay, so this is one of the strategy being followed by business owners in order to grow their business. So they need those information which is vital in their business operations. Okay, so the organizations needs accurate, up-to-date information. So when you say information, that is simply facts that are organized in a meaningful and usable form. For you to be able to use those meaningful and usable form to come up a decision which will make your business grow. Okay, so this information will guide the business owner on what to do or what product to improve or what to make, like feedbacks from the customers. So what are those selling products or best selling products, or any complaints they received. So based on that information, they're going to make a decision. Okay, so information is a vital resource that helps an organization serves its customers and of course operate smoothly. Now businesses use many resources in the daily operations, okay, such as raw materials and equipment to make products. Of course, before you can make a particular product, then you need those raw materials that you're going to process, no? And of course the equipments that you need in order to process those raw materials. The next is workers are used to process orders and build products. Of course, you need workers, you need employees. Like for example, if you need to purchase raw materials, then you need purchasing staff or a clerk in order to order or process those raw materials. Then you also need computers and other equipments for communication purposes, such as telephone, fax machine, computers to make an emails, and the like. Then resources used will vary from business to business. Okay, so it means that in every business there are different resources that you're going to use, no? Like for example, if you're in a product or manufacturing business, then there are those raw materials that you need in making such product. But if you're into service industry, most of the time you have your people or the workers that delivers the services of your business. Okay, so in all business, information is an essential resource. It affects how other resources are used and the overall success of the business. So how business use information? Most of the work performed in offices involves the processing of information. Like for example, if you are an operator of a machine, then there is this instructions how to use the machine. So after reading those instructions, then you're going to process in order to apply what you've learned based on those information. So the information you've read from those manuals or work instructions manual will guide you as a worker on how you do your job. Okay, then information starts as basic facts or raw data made up of numbers, symbols, and letters. Okay, so those are basic information. No? Then this raw data becomes information when it is organized in a meaningful way. So in other words, information actually are numbers, symbols, and letters. Information came from those numbers, symbols, and letters, and which we call as raw data. And from those raw data, from numbers, symbols, and letters, uh, this will become information once organized in a meaningful way. Okay, and again, you'll be able to use those information in doing your job. Now, this is an example of how information is being processed by office workers. Like we have a payroll manager, which prepares weekly payroll, raw data, which includes hours worked, rates of pay, and payroll deductions. In other words, this payroll manager or whoever is in charge in preparing the payroll of the employees in a certain company, in order to process the pay of these employees, then the payroll in charge or the payroll manager needs, like for example, raw data, no, like the total actual hours of work in a particular period, whether it's weekly, semi-monthly, or monthly payroll. Okay, then you also need to have raw data on how much is their daily pay, respective daily rate or hourly rate in cases there will be overtime to compute, and of course the deduction needed, like for example the mandatory deductions for an employee. Like here in the Philippines, we need to have an SS, PhilHealth, Pag-ibig deductions. Since those deductions are mandatory. So those are the raw data which the payroll in charge needs to process the payroll of those employees. Then we also have sales associate in a real estate office which prepares for a business trip. So they need basic facts such as the travel dates, the destination and flight numbers and times. And once arranged, an itinerary is created. Okay, so it's just like booking a flight, no? So you need the day, your destination, and of course the time. And once done, then you will have your itinerary. Now, information enables business to answer some of their most important questions, okay? Such as the following. So what do our customers want? So in order for the business owners to learn or to know what their customers want, very common they practice they're doing is to have a customer's feedback, or they let their customers fill out a customer survey form, or based on the different complaints, for example, they received, no? So information they could get from those feedbacks, so they would be able to learn what do their customers want. The next is asking question that how can we improve our product and deliver it faster. Okay, so again, answering these questions are very vital, no? Since again, it will help the business owner in making decisions for their respective businesses. And if you're into service industry, so probably questions such as who are our most productive employees, and then how much can we increase prices before we lose revenue, and where can we reduce costs. And so again, these questions, these sample questions will help the business owners know what information to gather in order to make a decision. Now, here are some examples for decisions affected by information. Like you need any information, no? And then what are the decisions affected? Like, no, for example, number one, what do our customers think of us? Then for the decision, which will be affected is like image to be built or point stress through advertising, and then improvements to product quality or customer service. Okay. Then who are our best customers and where are they located? So by asking this question, decision that would be affected in answering those questions, such as the placement of new branch locations, warehousing of goods to be shipped. Okay, so if you know, or if you're aware where are your best customers located, then probably it will make you decide to make a new branch on that particular location, since you have your best customers there, no? So again, so those are the questions that will give you information on what to do, no, in your business. So another one is who are our best dealers. So by answering this question, or by having those information, then you can make a decision to make a reward plans for dealers. Okay, sort of an incentive to encourage or motivate those best dealers of yours. Okay. Now, there are also obstacles to managing information. No? In other words, probably your decisions, or the decisions affected, would bring you problems, or probably the output or the goal that you are expecting cannot be achieved because of those probably inaccurate information. So some obstacles are the following, no? Uncoordinated procedures and files. So for example, if you're following a particular steps, however, in making those procedures or files, it was not properly discussed, or the people responsible to come up such particular procedure are not coordinating or talking to each other. So that could lead to problem. And then duplication of information, incompatible databases, outdated or inaccurate information. So again, like for example, the previous examples, if your answer there, the information you've gathered is inaccurate, then the decision you are going to make will again bring you a problem. Okay? Then missing information. So you need to be sure that informations are complete in order to come up a decision or a business strategy. And limited access to information. So for example, if you're going to make a new project and there are only limited access, no, or limited information or resources to come up to guide you on how to achieve such project. Okay, so again, those are obstacles in managing information. Now, what about information technologies? This refers to the equipment and software that allow a user to create, store, and retrieve information. Okay, so in an office environment, a lot of information are being stored, no, to equipment such as computer, uh, USB, and other like external drive or other equipments, no, that you are using in your company in order to create, store, and retrieve information. So you use technologies to do that. And then it can also be used to improve communication among the staff and between companies and their suppliers and customers. Such as, for example, if you have an internal messaging software wherein you could easily communicate with your co-workers, like if you have chat box or if you use the messenger, or if and then you have your group chat, for example, then you can easily communicate among each other, and then for companies and your suppliers and customers, probably you can use emails to communicate with them. And okay, so those are the different uh, usage of information technologies. Now, if you stored your information in a computer, for example, then you need to have a regular maintenance and keep those information uh, computers secure, no? So companies rely on computers daily to work well. So the system must be serviced and maintained on a regular basis. In other words, you need to uh, properly handle those computers, have a routine checkup for that or maintenance, that it will be clean, scanned for viruses and etc. Okay, and then all employees must follow the company's security procedures. So in other words, companies should have a security protocols, no? Like for example, in using computers, then what the employee needs to do, they should be oriented, no, on the process. Okay, and then security for computer systems involves protecting against loss of data and loss of service. Okay, so your IT team or the information team or the systems team, whatever the name of your IT people, no? So they should have a safety protocols to avoid or to protect against loss of data and loss of service, especially if you're a call center uh, company wherein you use computers, internet most of the time to communicate with your clients. So your IT people must maintain, no, that uh, services are not lost. So they must ensure those things. So here are some typical security measures such as the access control. So the purpose of this is employees are given limited access, not to information within their job responsibilities. Okay. Then outsiders prevented from accessing company networks. Okay. Now, an example of access control is, for example, for uh, example is in the HR department. So we have this HRIS, or the Human Resources Information System, wherein we can see all the information per employee, so we can see their, of course, their personal details such as their names, their address, their position, including their salaries. Now, when you say salaries, this is actually confidential. So if you're a plain HR clerk, wherein most of the time you only encode notices, for example, or contracts, So there's no need for you to access the salaries of those employees. So you will be given limited access or you cannot access. So you will be restricted on that particular detail, no? So in other words, you can only access informations, excuse me, for those information that will be needed in doing your job. Okay, so that is an example of access control. Then we also have identification and authentication. So some companies provide uh, passwords, no, for the employees to access the software. So to avoid also unauthorized access. Then we also have those accuracy checks, data scans, data encryption, accountability, and audit trails. So just read of those security measures. Okay. Okay, so that ends our topic on chapter 3. Now, for chapter 4, we're going to discuss about communicating in written form. Again, this is also very vital in an office environment since, as I've said, the first part of our subject discussion talks about the different office environment, no? Those vital information that you need to know as a student, especially you're an OAD student, wherein of course you will be working in an office, no? However, as the subject itself, it's legal office procedures, we'll talk specific on that on our the second part of our subject discussion. But again, as a prerequisite or a requirement before you would be able to work with specialized offices like for example a law office, then you need all this data, no, or information to guide you, since this is actually very basic as an office worker, as an office employee, to know these things. Okay, so this one for this chapter, again, communicating in written form. In other words, in order to communicate, you need to write a business letters, for example, memos, or any written documents. Okay, now for the first topic of this chapter, where uh, will be about reading and writing at work. So this chapter focuses on reading and preparing written messages at work, the ability to read and understand. Written documents is a vital skills for all types of office workers. Excuse me. So you will also learn to improve your reading skills, create effective business documents like business letters, memos, reports, and related documents. For the learning objectives, you'll be able to describe the kinds of reading common at work. Of course, no? As a worker or as an office worker, you need to read a lot, no? So as I mentioned, information is vital, uh, vital in every business, no? It's very vital or important thing for a business to prosper. So you need to read a lot. Like for example, you need to read about your company, the history of your company, the different products and services you are offering. So those are some information that you need to know, no? By of course reading those available materials. Then describe the nature of writing tasks common at work. Then describe the characteristics of effective written messages and describe an effective procedure for managing a writing task. Now, there are things that you could read at work, no? Like, again, learning about your company. So, why do you need to learn about your company? Of course, if you're a member of a certain company, like you work there, then it would depend, no, on what position you are handling. Like, for example, if you're a customer service representative, then you need to know the products and services you are offering. Okay? Or if you're a receptionist, then you need to learn about the different offices in your company, the different local numbers in case you'll need to transfer a call, or if someone will from the outside or customer will call you and ask you about your product and services, then you will be able to know uh, who to ask, no, within your company on that particular question your customer is asking. Then secondly, you also need to read in order to understand instructions and then responding to queries. Okay? Now, understanding instructions, like for example, if again you are responsible to operate a certain equipment, then especially if it's a new equipment, then you need to read the instructions manual in order to guide you on how to operate the equipment. And of course, responding queries, like I've mentioned, you need to know the products or services for the different departments within your company, the local numbers, so you would be able to answer those queries. Now, in order to improve your reading skills, then you should have a good comprehension skills. So when you say comprehension, this is actually the ability to understand concepts or material that has been read. So in other words, if you are reading a particular article, for example, or a paragraph, then after reading, uh, you were able to understand, no, what was the passage or the article is all about. So you were able to comprehend. So that is actually a reading skill, no, that you could understand or get the concept of the material you are reading. So comprehension is actually understanding, no. Now here are some guide on how you improve your reading comprehension. Like for example, the first one is focus. So when you start reading, you put aside anything else on your mind when you begin to read. So if you are thinking of something or something that would distract you, know, when you start reading, so better remind yourself, eliminate those problems. For example, if you have problems, personal problems, so do not start reading if you cannot eliminate those problems, no, or those are actually barriers in reading. So you need to be focused. And then secondly is you identify the purpose. So before you begin reading, you ask yourself, why do I want to know when I have completed this reading? So in other words, what learning you should get, no? So after you read this article, for example, or why do you read this particular article? So you need to have a purpose. Then you scan, get an overview of the page, the chapter, article, or book before you read carefully. Then summarize, mentally summarize as you move from one paragraph to another, particularly if you are reading to gain information for handling a task. Okay, summarizing actually will help you memorize, no, or retain all those information you've read, since you will be able to sort of apply, no, mentally what you've learned from those reading materials. Then sequence, after reading several paragraphs, try to think of the ideas in an appropriate order. Okay, so draw a mental picture, attempt to imagine what it is that is being discussed. Check up and of course reread. Okay, so these are the things that would help you improve your reading comprehension. Now, another one is vocabulary. Vocabulary consists of words you know and understand how to use. A large vocabulary increases your understanding of what you read. Words that are unfamiliar to you are a barrier to your reading. Of course, for example, if you are trying to improve your reading comprehension, so you read a particular article, for example, and then if you encounter some terms or words that you cannot understand, then it would stop you from understanding or comprehend what you are reading, because can you cannot understand a lot of words, no? So you need to improve your vocabulary so that you will also be able to comprehend what you are reading. So it is an advantage if you are rich in vocabulary, or you know a lot of terms, no, or words. Then another one is speed. This is another aspect of reading skills, relates to speed, no? The time required for reading a passage. Now, if you have the skill wherein you read fast, no? Then of course, in reading, if you have this speed, of course you will be able to read a lot, no? And be able to comprehend if you have a comprehension skills, and of course vocabulary. Okay, especially if you are working as a um, scriptwriter or editor, or something, some job that requires you to read a lot, no? For example, you're a proofreader, then you need to read fast. Okay, of course, reading fast, that means you understand what you're reading in order to uh, correct whatever you need to correct, no, on a particular passage or article or any material that you are reading. Okay, now the extent and nature of your writing duties are related to the nature of your job. In other words, if you write a lot, that means your job is the nature of your job, or it relates to, like for example, is a script writer or a secretary or an administrative assistant, wherein your job requires you to write a lot. Okay, and majority of your tasks will be spent to writing business letters or business documents. Okay, but if you're, for example, if you're a technical uh, people, then probably writing is not that much, no? However, there are also writing, you cannot really avoid writing in in doing your job, no? Since, like for example, if you need to make a report, then you write. Okay, but again, there are certain jobs actually that really requires, or probably majority of the tasks you will be doing, it will involve writing. Okay, now here are some common writing tasks, no? First is summarizing written messages. Okay, then writing notes of actions and decisions at meeting. Like for example, if you are the secretary assigned to take the minutes of the meeting, for example, in a board meeting, for example, this is actually a regular meeting for a corporation, no? Wherein they conduct, for example, if their regular board meeting will be done once a month, then as the secretary of the president, for example, you will be tasked to take down the minutes of their meetings. Okay, so you need to write a lot. Then revising others' writing and making changes. Okay, for example, uh, you're an editor, or your responsibility is to revise the others' task. I mean, writing tasks, no? And you're responsible to make changes. And then another one is preparing communication for others to review. Okay? For example, if you're an assistant of, uh, for example, HR, we're in HR department, do a lot of memorandums, no, internal memorandums. Then, for example, if you're the one in charge to make those communications, different communications, then after drafting, probably you uh, give it to your manager, for example, for them to review. And then composing messages and revising them before they are distributed. So it is also very important, no, when you make a written messages, that it will be properly reviewed, and then revised before the actual document be distributed to the recipients or whoever are the people that who need to read your messages. Now, business writing is a purpose-driven. Okay, so what does it mean? So when you write a certain or a written document, there is actually a purpose. No, you don't write anything without a purpose. Okay, like for example, communicating policies and procedures. So if, for example, if you're a new business and then you're in the process of making policies and procedures, then you need to write those policies and procedures so that later on you can communicate to the employees. No? Then another one is reporting on plans in progress. So the purpose there is to update the people or the workers, no, on a particular project, to update them on the progress of the work. And then seeking or giving information. So if you are the one responsible to give information or look for information, so you do writing a lot, no? And then sending messages to customers. For example, if you are marketing team, then you are responsible or you are tasked to answer queries or queries or questions, no, from the customer. Then you are responsible to make response or answers to them. Then again, you write your messages. And of course, lastly, following up oral discussions. Okay, so in company, they do a lot of informal talks. Like for example, if as a manager is coaching or counseling the employee, especially the employee is not performing well, then in order to make a follow-up, you need to have a written record on that particular coaching or counseling, no? So probably, for example, if the employee keeps on I mean, the employee is very, I mean, uh, is always absent. Okay, so the manager uh, calls the attention of this particular employee, then ask him his reason. So do the counseling. Okay, so after talking to this employee, the manager was able to learn his problem and then come up is certain action, no, in order to correct such uh, misbehavior. Okay, so probably after a week, then you make a follow-up based on that oral discussions you had with your employee. Okay, so those are examples of why you write I mean, uh, you do a lot of writing tasks, no, in your company. Okay, now there are also uh, employees, no, or workers in a certain company wherein their job is to edit or probably rewrite others' work. So rewriting is often required to create an effective message. Okay, so if, for example, if you are asked to formulate an internal memorandum, then again you need to make a draft and then make some correction and then rewrite. No? So the editor is a person who reviews what has been written to suggest changes in wording, organization, and content. That's good if you have an editor, no, in your company. So actually, it will depend on the structure of the company, the product and services. So, for example, if you are an editor, then the editor's responsibility is to review the written output, no, of others, and he will be is in charge on suggesting changes in terms of wording, organization, and content. Okay? Now, when you compose a message, actually message reflect the point of view of a department or the company. So administrative assistants and secretaries read incoming messages addressed to co-workers, prepare drafts or responses to the messages. Then executive reads the incoming messages and the suggested response at one time. Now, okay, for example, if you are in the accounting department and, for example, there will be an increase on the daily minimum wage. Okay, so in other words, the minimum salary, the employee will be receiving on a particular day. Now, for example, here in Cebu, right, currently, the minimum wage is 404 pesos a day. Now, for example, if DOLE will increase the minimum pay to 500, for example, so aside from, it would depend on your company, whether it will be the HR department or the accounting department is responsible to make the communication for the employees to be aware, then that particular department will be going to compose an internal office memorandum to communicate such changes. Okay, so probably the department secretary or assistant will be asked to compose the draft, and then of course the manager of the department will review and of course finalize whatever message or communication you wanted to disseminate among the company's employees. Now there are also this what we call 5 C's of business writing. These actually are characteristics of effective writing. Okay, so when you write a business letter, for example, or business correspondence or internal office memorandum, for example, number one, it should be clear. So when it's clear, when you say clear, it is logically arranged with the information in an order that is natural for the recipients to follow. So in other words, it is easy to understand. Okay? Like for example, the simple word is better, for them to easily understand your message. Then secondly, it should be concise. Concise states what you want to say in fewest and most direct words possible. Okay? So meaning it must be direct to the point. The fewer word, the better, And then courteous, conform to expected, polite, considerate behavior of the business world. So using the words like you are welcome, thank you, those are actually showing courtesy in your business letters, no? And then next is it should be complete, which provides all the information needed. So when you write a business letter, you must ensure that the information must be present, no? It should be complete for an easier understanding. And lastly, it should be correct. So it is accurate and up to date. Details provided should be verified before the final copy is prepared. Okay, so before you transmit or send those business correspondence, for example, if you need to send it to your customer, be sure that it is accurate. The information written there should be accurate and of course up to date, no? And again, just to be sure and just to be sure that it is correct, then you do some verifications, no? You ask all those responsible individuals based on the information, no? Or whoever is the one giving those information, you need to verify from them before you make the final copy or you prepare the final copy and send it out. Okay? Now, there are also guidelines for an effective message. Okay? First is to check the sentence structure and be sure all sentences are complete. Okay? So, check each sentences used and then also check the grammar if it's correct. And Then follow rules of punctuation and capitalization, and of course, spell words correctly. Now, there are also steps to guide you in writing effectively. Okay? First is to identify the reason for the written message. Okay? So in other words, the purpose why you are writing such particular business correspondence or written correspondence. So why are you writing, for example, an internal memorandum? Okay, because using the previous example, because you want the employees to know that there will be an increase of the daily rate, okay, the minimum basic wage. So that's your reason or purpose. Then next is to secure all information required for the message. So what are the things? The information like how much is the increase, when it will be effective, and etc. Then compose a draft of your message. Prepare an outline of what you plan to say. No? So in order to relay your message effectively, then you need to make a draft, an outline on how are you going to say your message, no? For an easier understanding. Then review your message, make corrections if needed. Okay? Then if required, submit your draft to a colleague or manager for review and approval. Okay? That is if it's needed, no? Then prepare a revised copy of your message. Proofread carefully. Okay? So, in other words, look for a missing or a misspelled word, for example, improper punctuation, or you missing words or whatever, you know. So you do proofreading. And then lastly, sign and prepare the final communication for distribution. Okay? So that ends our topic for today. So again, I encourage all of you to uh, send your questions, no, with our class Biddle, so that we could discuss those questions during our weekly group discussion. Okay. So before we end the discussion, again, I want to remind all of you that we will be having a short quiz, which will be scheduled 20 minutes before the end of our class schedule. So you need to really listen or watch this discussion first before you could answer the short quiz. Okay? So that's all for now, and have a good day.